Facility maintenance has traditionally been frequency-based, meaning that supervision and care was done on a regular basis, regardless if needed or not. New technologies, such as sensors and advanced analytics, has transformed facility maintenance and enabled a more proactive approach. This allows for a more targeted and responsive maintenance strategy where resources are allocated based on actual needs, reducing the downtime and optimizing operational efficiency. Warm welcome to this webinar. Today we will learn how Coor and the Öresund Bridge have established a modern and innovative partnership to deliver world-class property maintenance using a structured and data-driven approach. My name is Ylva Norlin and I'm a Service Development Manager here at Coor within property. I will be the moderator of this webinar. With me today in the studio, I have my colleague Erik Bustad, Contract Manager at Coor and responsible for the Öresund Bridge. And with us on the link, we have the Property Director of the Öresund Bridge, Bengt Hergart.
Morning.
And last but not least, our colleague Adai Jacob, Asset Management Specialist from Coor.
Thanks for having me.
We hope that today's discussion will provide you with new insight and spark interesting conversations. At the end, we will make some time for questions, so just write them in the Q&A window and we will go through as many as we have time for. Before we begin, I want to inform you that this webinar will be recorded and later distributed. But now, let's dive into the exciting topic of digital property maintenance. The Öresund Bridge is an impressive engineering piece that connects Sweden and Denmark and is a vital link for many people and businesses. Bengt, before we dive into the maintenance and partnership, could you please tell us more about the bridge itself?
I will. The Öresund Bridge company was founded in order to build and then to operate the bridge. And the purpose, the political dream, was to create more integration between south of Sweden and east part of Denmark. And we are looking for a common labor market, a common housing market, and to facilitate business across the strait. And every day we have approximately 100,000 travelers over the bridge. 17,000 or 16,000 commuters. Before the bridges was 2,000, and we have 20,000 vehicles a day and 180 trains. So it's a very big mega structure, and business across. An example that business have been facilitated by the bridge is that nowadays 20% of the passenger of the Copenhagen airport comes from Sweden, which makes Copenhagen Airport actually the second largest Swedish airport. The structure is rather complex, especially the tunnel. We have 40,000 different inventories. We have a very small client organization. We've only 10-15 people, and therefore we have chosen the strategy to buy maintenance from a qualified supplier, such as Coor, that can deal with that span. And in fact, it's not only a bridge. We call it the Öresund Bridge, and we call the company the Öresund Bridge, and it is a bridge, 8 kilometer of a bridge with a stay cable high bridge, but it's also a tunnel immersed. Yeah, there comes the island first. Okay, but it's an artificial island, 4 kilometers, and it's a 4-kilometer immersed tunnel. So it's not a bored tunnel, but immersed. And finally, we have also on the we are owner of the railway, so we are like a small national infrastructure authority, but in our case, we are 50% owned by Swedish and Danish state. And finally, we have a toll station on the Swedish side. So that's what we call the Öresund Bridge.
Thank you, Bengt. It seems like a lot of things to maintain. Eric, how do you manage that?
Well, as you understand, we have a fantastic and unique object to handle, and we're trying to sustain it for future generations. And at the bridge, you'll find most things. And I really like the analogy that Bengt referred to of a small traffic or infrastructure authority within the distance of 16 kilometers. And that concentration of technique comes both with opportunities and challenges for us. And at the moment, we are about 15 on-site employees or individuals handling this scope. And it probably goes without saying that 15 people cannot fully cover the needs of an infrastructure or a traffic authority. And we also work with a scope of a 24/7 open link and 365 days a year. So it's supposed to always be open. And our ways of dealing with this challenge is that we rely on close collaborations, and we try to find very effective ways to reach common goals, which we will talk about later. And one way to illustrate this, perhaps the best one, is that we have a fictional maintenance company together with the Öresund Bridge called Bridge Tech. And it's totally based on the partnering model, a Vested-inspired one. And Bridge Tech consists of both co-workers from us, Coor, and the Öresund Bridge. And the full scope of what we do is about 23,000 assets, and out of which 17,000 are mapped and subject of maintenance, meaning that we are either maintaining them or monitor them for some degree. So.
Oh, that's very impressive. Bengt, to achieve world-class maintenance, I know you have set some clear long-term targets. Can you tell us a bit about them?
Yes, certainly. The business plan of the bridge consists of 4 different focus areas, and property management addresses 2 of them: a sustainable bridge for the next generation and being business-minded. 4 times 100. We want to, I think that might be the most sustainable thing we can do is to prolong the design life, the service life of the bridge from originally being 100 years to another 100 years, so in total 200 years. So that's one of our long-time targets. 100% availability, 100% free from serious accidents, and 100% net CO2 carbon free. So that's our long-time sustainability targets. And then to reduce total cost of ownership, I would say it's not only being business-minded, it's also a sustainability thing, because if coming generation cannot afford all the maintenance on the bridge, then it's not sustainable. It will not last for 100 years. So our task together with Coor is to make maintenance plan as affordable as possible for the coming generation. So it's pretty much maintenance development we want from Coor. And so far we have managed quite well. And the chart above shows operating cost the last 10 years, and operating cost goes down. We have low cost now than we have the first year, and then you have to bear in mind that older bridge demands more maintenance than a younger one, and also this is in running price level, so we have fight down the inflation as well. And the chart below shows that we have our forecast for 50-year reinvestment period have been reduced by 50%. So far so good, but certainly we need some help from Coor to continue with this development.
Thank you for sharing, Bengt. The results are very impressive, and I'm curious to know more about how you have achieved that. So let's move on to the second topic of today, which is the partnership between Coor and the Öresund Bridge. Bengt, can you also tell us about the guiding principles?
Yeah, and as Eric told you, we call the collaboration Bridge Tech, and you can see the logo here. The whole idea with the partnership from our side was that we want to have a business model that the best for the bridge is also the best for our partner. Typically, in a traditional setup, the supplier have a bigger profit when they sell a lot of activities. We want the opposite. We want a affordable maintenance plan with so few activities as possible. It should be good enough, but we don't want Eric and his team to sell more. We want them to sell less, but we still want them to have a good profit. So that's the idea of the guiding of the contract. And then we agreed that instead of having hundreds of clauses telling us what to do and who is responsible, we have some guiding principles. And the guiding principles should avoid the thing that I have 2 people hired only to say no to additional work, and Eric has 2 people finding creative suggestion for additional work that they will have paid for. So this is what we go back to and rely on, the guiding principles. And supporting the guiding principles, we have some intense incentives in the contract on the next slide. And the basis is that Coor can invoice every activity, all activities they do on a cost basis without any surcharges and so on. But on the other hand, they will have a variable profit margin. So if they can achieve good results and our KPI, key performance indices, are fulfilled, then they can get a maximum profit margin, and they can never go below a minimum level. So Coor, if they do a good job together with us in Bridge Tech, they can improve their profit margin instead of selling us more things that we don't need. And the second part of the incentive is that we each year agree on a maintenance budget. And if there are some savings in that budget, we split the savings between the parties. So with this construction of with guiding principles and the incentives, I think that we have achieved that. What's good for us is also good for Coor.
Yeah, I would say that from a supplier perspective, and this just to clarify what Bengt has already said, but it caps our upside and downside when it comes to the financial aspects of the delivery. And one big benefit of this, I would say, is that it removes economic barriers and control functions. And when I say barriers, I mean that it removes the traditional business relationships between a buyer and a seller, which is us in this case. And it also simplifies our own internal monitoring. So it's easier for us to handle financials internally. Both these aspects enables us to, instead of focus on financials, we focus on quality. And the more we focus on quality, in best case, we get a high profit. So I think it's a win-win and a much more effective ways of doing what we're doing.
Definitely. Thank you both. It's very interesting to learn how this type of steering leads to a partnership where both parties are working towards a common goal. When talking about world-class maintenance, you mentioned a data-driven approach. Bengt, can you explain what that means?
Yeah, I would say simply expressed, is that we want the bridge to talk to us. We want the bridge to tell us when it needed some extra love and maintenance, instead of having a time-based maintenance run by the schedule. So that's basically what we mean. And we have a piece of property with a lot of devices that already is connected by sensors. So they can, in one way, talk to us. And we collect a lot of data. The challenge is to use the data in a proper way and to go over to data-driven maintenance. And in order to make things happen, we have a key performance index we call data-driven maintenance, and we are going through the baseline is the standard, and you see that to the left in the picture. Then we have picked out that if it's condition-based, based on sensor data, or if it's a more advanced machine learning algorithm, then we regard that inventory to be data-driven, have a data-driven maintenance. And we have set up a target to reach 10,000 inventories data-driven at the end of 2025. And we started with 269, and now it's above 4,000. And what you can see in the chart is that the total number of inventories that are data-driven on Öresund Bridge is the black one, and the reddish is Coor. So Coor, in fact, most of the data-driven inventory so far have been data-driven because of Coor's work at our bridge. So we are very pleased with that.
Thank you, Bengt. Adai, I know you have an example of a condition-based maintenance. Could you tell us about that?
Sure, absolutely. So what I would like to talk about is the jet fans that we have in the tunnel segments. It is a safety critical equipment in case of fire or any type of accidents in the immersed tunnel. So we have about 20 rows of jet fans, about 256 individual fans. And today they aren't completely condition based. We need to actually physically take us out to the measuring points and record data to analyze. But based on this analysis, we then decide and take necessary actions. So at this point, we are about to launch a project to connect the jet fans to our PCMS system or our SCADA system, so that we can monitor the fans. So, for example, we are then able to see vibrational changes over time and determine how balanced the fans are, locate where the vibrations come from, depending on the frequency spectrum that is measured. And from there, we can take better decisions and actions based on a vast amount of data. And the key here is the vast amount of data over time. In addition, we can gain more knowledge of our equipment, and for coordinating maintenance activities, it will become much easier, safer, and more climate friendly. So our effect on traffic and climate will be extensively reduced, and maintenance costs will be reduced, or at least optimized in regard to necessary plan of action.
Thank you for sharing. That was a very good example of how data can help us make better decisions. Now let's dive into asset management. I know there's a very structured method that you're using that has been a very successful tool to meet the common goals. Can you tell us about it?
Yeah, I can introduce the topic. So the objective is world-class maintenance. And the way we strive to achieve this is to have the best possible knowledge of the infrastructure, and by systemizing our knowledge and maintenance plan for the total of 3,000 assets, 23,000 assets. And it's kind of a low-level approach. I mean, we need to cover 23,000 assets. And this requires not only time, but also daily focus on this topic. And we try to not only do this by ourselves, but also challenging ourselves by having an external ISO standard. So we have a rather unique ISO standard certification, the 55001 at the Öresund Bridge. And the guy who knows the most about this, I think you're about to hand over the word to him now, Ylva, and that's Adai.
I will indeed. So Adai, can you as an asset management specialist explain more in detail what this means?
Absolutely. So one of our methods of working is how we risk and assess our individual assets in our asset directory, in our maintenance scope. So why do we really do this? So, well, the purpose of our method of working in relation to risk and performance assessment is to map out the overall condition of the technical system or facility by focusing on the individual asset and its demanded or defined function. So with this mapping, we can furthermore choose the correct maintenance strategy and optimize the maintenance plan by making the right decision based on facts and receive relevant information for the reinvestment plan, for example. So all of us working within the technical department have some sort of a perceived knowledge, but sometimes it can be a little bit hard to see the forest through all the trees, so to speak. So we set out a plan with all the technical department managers and relevant parts from the maintenance team that has a special knowledge about the technical system firsthand. So over to our decision matrix. It's before starting to assess, we need to have some points with us in the back of our minds. Is it the right design or technology? Is it right equipment at the right place? What are the consequences, for example, of a fault or a loss of function? So when we're looking at the individual asset, we first look at the criticality. For us, the relevant factors here are health and safety, environment, and lastly, operations. And here at the Öresund Bridge, it's, for example, effect on availability or economical or operational factors. So that is when a loss of function occurs, we grade the effect on a 1 to 4 scale, 1 being minor effect and 4 being severe or catastrophic. So then we need to determine how often loss of function most likely occurs if there is no historic data. So rarely being a 1 grade, that is occurrence with less than 8 years, and 4 being likely to happen within 6 months, for example. So we look at it from a quantitative perspective and qualitative perspective as well. Technical redundancy is considered and will deduct some kind of a point from the fault frequency. So this gives us risk equals criticality times fault frequency. That is the probability of fault. So we're provided with indication where the asset is situated in our matrix. R1, for example, it's an insignificant, R2 acceptable risk, and R3 an unacceptable risk. So for the second part of our assessment, the performance assessment consists of the actual state of the asset and aging, both quantitative and qualitative. Same thing here. Some points to consider is the best to keep maintaining or replace. Is it relatively easy or reasonable to maintain? Are there spare parts on the market, for example? So going forward, same thing here. We have a 1 to 4 scale, 1 being mint condition and demand function can be maintained, and 4 being completely unacceptable condition. It has many faults accorded, wear and tear is prevalent, or it's heavily corroded. And key point here is that demanded function cannot be maintained, or a necessary service level is not available. So some type of reconstruction should be made. We've passed the point of renovation.
Okay, so when you have done these type of classifications, what do you do with the results?
Well, now we have 2 points to move forward from. That is risk and performance, RMP. So we put this in our decision matrix. So where should we focus and prioritize? Well, when we see our points in the red scale, for example, there is where we need to focus, and that is to reinvestments, adjustments of the maintenance plan, or perhaps completely decommission the system if it's too dangerous, for example, or educating our own personnel. So on the green scale, we have our cost reducing possibilities. So we're most likely doing too much maintenance in terms of activities and resources, for example. So if it's in the yellow scale, we don't make any major changes. We have a satisfactory level of maintenance and costs connected to such activities. So we just monitor. We're probably in line where we should be. So further on, the goal here is not to be in the green, but to adjust our maintenance to an acceptable level where we optimize our resources and cost to a reasonable and effective level in regards to our maintenance plan.
Thank you. But what are you getting with the assessment, and also what challenges are you encountering?
So from our methodology, we have a decision support in form of flowing chart that helps us prioritize our actions. In those cases, we might need to adjust, for example, frequency of how often we perform maintenance, and then we make sure to relay to relevant parties within the organization. For us, that's head of maintenance and technical department manager, and also our own personnel. Then in other cases where demanded function cannot be sustained, we inform the technical department manager through a suggestion for the reinvestment plan. Or if it's critical equipment, we act fast together to make sure we can get the asset back to demand function. So in short, better control and monitoring of our assets, factual decision making, and continuous improvement of our maintenance and our maintenance strategy.
Thank you so much. Another question is, how do you proceed if an error has occurred at the facility?
Yeah, well, we had an incident in March of 2023 where a subcontractor was performing a calendar-based preventive maintenance. It was testing and inspection of high voltage circuit breakers. So they proceeded with instructions on our high voltage systems from station to station, starting in Denmark. That's station 1, and when they arrived at station 12, the incoming power on the Swedish side, they induced the trip voltage and the breaker tripped. It was just supposed to be indicating a trip. But this was causing a shutdown of several technical systems. So the duration of power outage was about 13 minutes until the backup power was connected to the bus bar, and about 32 man-hours to reset all affected equipment. So it was bestowed on me to make a root cause analysis. So I requested the information from actual individual with the event log or course of events, and then eventually with all information at hand, we could assess and decide what necessary actions needed to be taken. So the first one, this is a multi-layered problem, or the conclusion is multi-layered. So the first thing is to have clear instruction that's affecting all these kinds of maintenance activities. Second is to understand what system is technically governing. And third is to reinvest in the high voltage breakers, since they were reaching an end of life, and spare parts are scarce on the market, and repairs therefore hard to make. So the goal here with the root cause analysis is to make sure that the fault never occurs again. And in this case, I feel we met that expectation.
Definitely. Thank you, Dai. A question for you, Eric. How about the people perspective? How do you make sure that everyone acts within the rules of this framework?
That's a good question, because it's nice to talk about technique and data-driven maintenance, and the overall objective that we will become more less dependent on humans, but we're not there yet. So we are about 15 people, and when Dai talks about his example, it's clear that it's a human error that occurs. So we strive and we try to handle this with our employees on a daily basis, that they need to understand and that they are part of the overall objective here. And one good way of doing that is what we're doing right now, setting a good example, us within the management position, talking about this, the partnership and what we do. And to finally, it's systematic work. It's hard work that we remind each other. We try to create a culture that involves people being part of Bridge Tech and what we're trying to accomplish together.
Thank you so much for sharing how this structured way of working with asset management has contributed to the success. Now I want to make some time for you as the audience to ask questions. So don't hesitate to add your question in the Q&A function in Teams. I will give everyone some time to do that. And in the meantime, I want to ask Bengt, what do you see as the most important areas of development within property delivery in the upcoming years?
I would say developing competence within the area of data and especially analyzing data. I would say that when we started to buy maintenance at the bridge, it was not possible to buy that from a supplier. So we had specialist consultants doing analysis of data and especially big data. Now we can see over time that it's possible to buy it. As you can see, a living example in Adai. They have a specialist function with high competence in data-driven maintenance and to analyze things. And I think the next step is that it's part of the everyday for a technician in Coor. So obviously, when they were recruited once upon a time, they was recruited on more traditional maintenance basis. And the new generation of service technicians or maintenance technicians, they will have in their basis competencies to analyze data. Eric told about machine taking over or the computers taking over, but still there must be data-driven decisions, and they couldn't be done all the way by computers or specialist functions as Adai. It have to be field technicians.
Agree, Bengt. Another question for you here, actually from the audience. What do you think has been the key factor to success in your partnership?
Yeah, that's a good question. Eric have to correct me if I'm wrong, but I think that in one way Öresund Bridge is a little bit different. We want to have development. Of course we want to reduce cost, but we think the way of reducing cost is development. And to create a partnership around development, I think it's much easier than if the partnership only is that to reduce cost. So I think when we have sat down and to form this partnership, I think curiosity, the thing that we have a common goal to develop, I think have been successful, have helped us to form the partnership.
Do you agree, Eric?
Yeah, I will not correct you, Bengt, on this. And I find the way that you approach things are very humble. And you, instead of telling us as a buyer, this is what you should do, you acknowledge that you don't know everything. And you say, come and help us, be our partner in reaching our goals. And by doing that, I think you allow us to be very humble too, because we don't know everything either. And when we acknowledge this, I think we can address our shortcomings together, and working together, we know more than each side working on its own. So this is a great way of improving together, and it's also a very rewarding way of working, I would say. So it keeps us very motivated.
Yeah, and if I can add a thing there, I think to buy a function rather than telling you what to do, that we want to have a nice dinner, and you deliver a nice dinner. We don't say what type of food we want and where you should buy it. So, and that's also one of the guiding principles. We should give one. You can take your responsibility without we sitting on your shoulders. So I think that's good. And then what you say about the technical scope, we have railway, we have high voltage, low voltage, communication systems, steel, concrete, the mega structure, and few people. So we know that we have to ask someone, and we could go to the consultant market or we could go to the supplier market. We have chosen to go to the supplier market. And the reason for that is if we ask a consultant, they will give us more than good enough. they won't take any risk at all. They will give us extra, and that will be very expensive. So we rely on the supply market.
And another one for you, Eric, as a contract manager. Is this what you have been talking about now? Is that why you enjoy working with Öresund Bridge so much?
I think it is. And I think being here doing this webinar, talking about this together with Bengt and Adai, I think it's rather unique for me, at least. When Bengt says Öresundsbron is different, I think this is a good example of it. I don't speak like this with many other clients. But.
Understand. Thank you so much. I hope that today's event has been inspiring and provided valuable insight that you can take back to your own organizations. Once again, thank you, Bengt, Adai, and Eric, for sharing your expertise, and to all of you who has been listening. If you have any unanswered questions, just reach out to us. Either us who has participated here today or to your local property expert in your country. Thank you again, and I wish you a fantastic Wednesday.
Thank you.
Thank you all.